Die Hard 4 movie review. So this is also known as Live Free or Die Hard. And at the time it came out, the marketing surrounding it was Die Hard 4.0 because it was about computers. Although I haven't heard that name recently. Anyways, I guess I'll start off with a confession. I've never really been a huge fan of the Die Hard series. Or, I don't know. I like them well enough. Like, if they're on TV, I'll watch them. But I don't think I've ever sat down and watched any of the first three from beginning to end. I mean, I must have seen most, if not all, of these movies over time, just from them being on TV so much, or them being in the college dormitories, you know, people playing them in the college dormitories. But I don't think I actually sat down and watched the whole thing from beginning to end. But I was at a friend's apartment, and we were just kind of hanging out. We were looking for a movie to watch, and he said he was in the mood for a mindless action flick. And Die Hard started to be thrown around. This was back at the time when Die Hard 4 was newly out on DVD. Now, Die Hard 4 had gotten a number of bad reviews, so we were both a little bit cautious about seeing it. I think we'd both read bad reviews of it, and we'd known people who had given it personal word-of-mouth bad reviews. But my friend told me his system. He said he always goes by Empire Magazine. It's an online magazine. Well, I think it's a print magazine as well, but it's also online. He says if they give it 3 stars or more, he thinks that the movie is worth checking out, and he trusts their system so completely that he feels like they've never let him down. So he looked it up, and Die Hard 4 got a solid 3 stars from Empire Magazine. So we decided to give it a go. People say the word popcorn movie a lot, like, oh, it's just a popcorn movie. But, like, I think this is the ultimate popcorn movie in that the movie is unwatchable if you don't have popcorn. Like, if you're just watching the movie, you'd probably be like, oh, what is this? But if you have kind of something like sweet and salty that you're shoveling into your mouth, popcorn and maybe Coca-Cola or chocolate or, you know, whatever your poison of choice happens to be. If you have some sort of junk food that you're shoveling in your mouth while you're watching the movie. So it's kind of like, it's not so much the movie, it's kind of like the whole snack and the movie. Then it becomes watchable, because then you're just kind of enjoying the junk food and you're just kind of distracted by the explosions on screen, and you're not really thinking too hard about whether it makes sense or not. This is that kind of movie. Like, it's perfectly watchable if you've got a lot of junk food with you. Whatever you do, don't try and watch this movie without any snacks. Now, this movie, this movie is not realistic. And from my perspective, I'm not sure the Die Hard movies have ever been realistic. Although I know fans of these movies say that, like, the first couple or the first 3 were kind of more grounded and sort of a realistic world, and then it just kind of lost its way after that. But this is just ridiculous. Like, the laws of physics are just completely out the window for this movie. It's like watching a cartoon, you know, those old Looney Tunes, only it's an action movie, so it's for adults. They're making a really big deal of updating the Die Hard world for the 21st century. Even calling it Die Hard 4.0 was on all the posters. But actually, the idea of having computer hackers as the ultimate terrorists isn't really quite as novel as the marketing campaign for this movie would have you believe. They've been doing movies about hackers for decades. I mean, that James Bond was doing a movie about evil hackers way back in the 90s. Now, I don't really know a lot about computers. I'm not a computer guy. My friend actually knows a fair bit about IT, and he was just so exasperated by this movie. At first he started complaining, and then his girlfriend was there as well. She said, just be quiet and watch the movie. So then he would just kind of throw his hands up every time something completely unrealistic happened. I largely didn't know. I'm not a computer guy, but apparently computers can't do much of the stuff that they do in this movie. I mean, the biggest one, and this is something even I caught on to as a non-computer guy, is in the beginning when hackers kind of go into this guy's computer, and then it explodes and blows up the whole house or something. And I asked my friend, you know, can a hacker make your computer explode? He said, no, not unless they wired like a bunch of explosives or C4 to the computer. And you'd notice it if there was a bunch of explosives wired to your computer. So that, you know, that just kind of, that's right at the beginning of the movie. But that gives you a sense of kind of the general tone of realism that's going on here. I guess the moral is you don't take the computer or the IT parts of this movie any more seriously than you would take the physics of this movie. Okay. Moving on to a few other nitpicks. This movie is rated PG-13. The previous Die Hard movies 1, 2, and 3 had all been rated R, and they wanted a PG-13 rating for some reason. So essentially what they did is no sexuality, and they got rid of the F word. Like no one says fuck in this movie. So of course, you know, the Die Hard movies, they're famous for their lines, yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker, or whatever. Here, they don't do that. But they do have lots of graphic violence. And that made a lot of people say that this just goes to show how broken the rating systems are. And this kind of is relating to a movie review I did earlier called This Film Is Not Yet Rated, which is a critique of how broken the movie rating systems are. But when this movie came out, it was held up as an example of the fact that people are so obsessed about these four-letter words, the four-letter words are what get it the R rating, not the violence. So I'm going to quote from a website which is expanding on the theme of the documentary film, This Film Is Not Yet Rated, which had Die Hard number 4 on their list of movies that prove that the MPAA rating system is broken. And they say, quote, "The MPAA's liberal stance on violence and conservativeness on foul language is fully on display here. It's okay to show Bruce Willis graphically putting a gun into a wound in his shoulder and pulling the trigger. But having him say, yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker, as McClane's character was meant to do, is of course unacceptable. The film also featured a woman getting hit by a car, then plunging to a fiery death, and dozens of graphic gunshot deaths, and a man getting ground up into a fine hamburgery pulp. But no F word and no sex means that kids are allowed to check this one out." Now, I'm with him 100% on this, except I'm not arguing for more censorship. Like, I don't think that they should, I don't want them to censor the violence necessarily. I just think it's ridiculous that if, you know, that we've made kind of such a sacred cow out of the F word. That just that one word, well, maybe that one word and maybe some sexuality makes a difference between a PG-13 rating and an R rating. Okay, one more bone to pick with this movie and then I'm done. Another thing I've often been complaining about in my movie reviews is the depiction of Asians in American movies. I've made the case that they're almost always as kind of comic characters or as villains. And then sure enough, this movie has an Asian character as a villain. Now, again, I don't want to say that Asian actors can never be villains. You know, if it was just this one movie in isolation, it wouldn't be a big deal, but it's just this consistent pattern. So this movie features Margaret Quinsley, who goes by the stage name Maggie Q, who's half Vietnamese. And for my money, she could have easily been cast as the heroine or the love interest of the hero. But because she's Asian, they make her into the seductive Asian villainess. Yeah, I don't know. Am I being too sensitive on this? Again, if it was just this one movie, it wouldn't be a big deal, but it's just this kind of patterns. And then, after Bruce Willis, after she dies, Bruce Willis says the line, "Can I get another dead Asian hooker bitch over here right away?" And now what does that even mean? Dead Asian hooker bitch. The best I can make out is this is kind of a reference to the stereotype of the Vietnamese prostitute. Thinking back to like movies like Full Metal Jacket or something like that. I mean, does that seem like I'm stretching? It probably seems like I'm stretching, but what else could it possibly mean? I mean, if not that, then what? I mean, in the context of this movie, there was no setup that this character was a hooker or anything like that. It's just, I guess, in Bruce Willis's mind or in the mindset of this movie, Asian is equivalent to hooker. That's the best I could figure out. I don't know. It was such a bizarre line. Okay, rant over. To sum up, it's a mindless action film with some complaints, I guess. But worth watching if you've got lots of popcorn. Whatever you do, don't watch this without the popcorn.